Hello and welcome to This Podcast Cannot Continue, episode 9. We're almost at 10. That's what I got to say about that. I'm Colin.
I'm Ben. Yeah, 10's a good milestone.
I think so. So, I was talking to you about this. I think
It's
for
really
10,
our first milestone.
it's
Sorry,
true.
go ahead.
It's true. I was thinking for episode 10, we switch up the format a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
What I want to do, it's going to be some homework, sort of, not too much, is I want us to both bring a list of 10 games on a topic that has not been decided yet. We're going to do this off podcast. So,
Yeah, between ourselves, we'll decide whatever the parameter for that is.
yeah. And then what
Okay.
we're going to do is we're going to make like a list episode. Like we're going to try to debate and come up with a more definitive, like maybe like top 5. Like if we both bring, like, I'm just going to toss it out there. Like let's hash it out right now. If we do 10, okay, then we try to do 5. Do you think that's like a good format, or should we just stick our 10 lists together and try to come up with one list of 10?
I'm trying to figure out what exactly you mean. So if the end goal is to make a list of 10 of something,
Well,
then
maybe
if we both bring 10 of our own and we're eliminating
10
10 out of,
potentially.
possibly 5 out of people's lists or something like that, and then like the remaining 10 are like the best 10 of
That
our
topic, yeah.
of our collective opinion, you and I together, then we could result. Yeah, I mean, we could also result in picking some of the same things, but if anything, that just means we have to eliminate less.
That's true. That's what I was thinking of. I was just like, maybe if we pick
I think if we
the same
expect
things. That's why I was thinking maybe a
if we
smaller
bring 10
list.
each, so a total of 20, and then cut it down to 10,
Okay.
then that means we can cut enough. If we pick totally unique stuff, it'll be like we're cutting a lot, but I
Okay.
imagine that whatever this topic is, there will be some overlap.
I think
So then
so.
like that gives us room that we're still forced to cut something, so that way we don't end up like with a total list of like 13 unique games and we're only cutting 3 or something like that.
Right. Okay. You've convinced me. In my mind, I was thinking we bring more, and then we cut to a smaller list, and then there's more discussion. However, I think the order of the 10, even if we bring the same ones, will still be a discussion. So that's what we're going to go with. Okay. So we've figured this out on air, sort of.
10 of what? Are we going to talk about what it is right now, or it's a secret till next episode?
It's going to be a little bit of a surprise, but get ready
Okay.
for a list discussion.
All right, so you'll let me
argument.
know after or between now and then.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm thinking this might be like a recurring thing, so I think it'll be fun to approach each one with a different list.
Yeah.
And then kind of go at it. I just
It'll
felt
be
10
something it'll be something kind of specific, won't it?
Yes.
Not something super general. Yeah.
Exactly.
I think you mentioned something along these lines.
I've been
before,
kicking around some ideas.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
I've been kicking around some ideas, and I want to float that to you and tease a little bit. So
Yeah, I mean, I'm down for it. So I would say if you're listening to this, look forward to that in the next episode, because
episode 10.
that sounds great.
Episode 10. Maybe there'll be new music.
Ooh.
That's putting a lot on me. We'll see. We'll find out. We'll find out. Let's see here. Well, we can launch right into it if you'd like. Or if you
Sure.
have something you want to lead into it with, we can do that as well.
I don't have any type of pre-podcast notes or news or anything. So
It was really just the episode 10 milestone that I had on my plate. So,
Cool.
Except for the fact that Nier comes out like in a week.
the Replicant remake.
Yep, which I'm really excited for.
Interesting thing, there's been a couple of discoveries I saw over at the Nier subreddit. some people were able to pre-order PS5 copies, and what they're seeing is your PlayStation like account or like your user profile on the PS5. You can have like display pictures, and just like on the PS4, games include certain display pictures. And
For sure.
there's a character who is in one of the like short stories or whatever that was like released that fills in some of the gaps between stuff, who never actually appeared in the original version of the game, as well as like some images that depict a location associated with that character and with this written material. So it sounds like there's a little bit of extra content that wasn't in the original. So that's kind of nice.
Ooh, that's got me excited.
Yeah.
I'm into
it's
that.
actually really exciting.
I'm into that. Okay.
Can't complain about extra content.
I
Really looking forward
can't.
to that one.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll be talking about that one a couple episodes from now.
We'll be talking about that one a couple episodes from now, and we'll be talking about the soundtrack for literally ever, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if it's a lot of the same songs, I honestly just put that soundtrack on when I'm working sometimes. So it'll actually be kind of interesting to play the game
With the
knowing
context?
the OST.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, like it's not going to surprise me. And maybe it'll surprise me like where they use songs, but I like know all the songs to that OST already.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Cool.
Excited. Okay.
So topics?
Yeah, I'm going to let you go first as I kicked it off
Sure.
last week.
Sure, yeah. I just have some thoughts, kind of loose, idle thoughts about games as a service, and I just want to see what you think of them, and if we're in agreement or not.
Okay. My topic is in a similar zone, if you will. So this is going to be good. Okay, yeah, hit me.
So what I've been thinking about is like I notice when I'm on Reddit in like gaming subreddits specifically that like when a game is announced as a game as a service, or like when it becomes obvious that a game is going to be a game as a service, like people have an extremely like negative sort of reaction to that. Do you know what I mean? Like why is everything a game as a service nowadays, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that like what I want to kind of talk about is like how games as a service is becoming a thing that's like invasive to genres where it doesn't belong.
Okay.
But also that we should be careful not to just blanket, like as gamers, right? Let's say as gamers, as consumers, to like blanket boycott like any game that is technically a live service, because I think that there are certain games and genres that are like supposed to be live services, and that's just kind of like an indisputable part of how they work, that like you don't just change that just because like let's say for example Avengers was negatively affected by becoming a game as a service. You know what I mean? Like
okay, so that's what I was going to ask was what are you classifying as games as service? Are you including MMOs in this?
I mean, yeah, of course.
Gotchas?
Of course. Any game that essentially like cannot be played offline. Any game where like your, let's say, save data is not on your system but on on a server basically.
Right.
Like if you have an account for the game that's not like a storefront account like Steam. I mean like an actual account for that game.
Yeah.
Then it's a game as a service, let's say. You know what I mean? So like here, let's get into it. Okay. So like an example of a game as a service that I think doesn't have to be one, actually. And it's funny because like you might think I want to talk about Avengers first, but we can come back around to that.
Yeah.
I actually think that it doesn't have to be a game as a service, but I think it's enriched by being one a little bit, is Dota 2.
Okay.
So
I'm not
a little
super
bit of
familiar
context.
with the MOBA scene, so you're gonna have to give me some background here.
So I'll give you the rundown, right,
Cool.
of like why this one comes to mind. Because so Dota 2, okay, so it's born out of being a Warcraft 3 mod, like Warcraft 3 the RTS. And so as such, Warcraft 3 I would say was like not a game as a service because it's sort of an old school like RTS and it's like has I mean, it belongs to the era of like the traditional, like it's an offline game with like a campaign experience. And then there's like LAN multiplayer or there's online multiplayer once they establish BattleNet and that kind of stuff. But it's like, it's directly connecting like to your opponent. Maybe you have servers that are lobbies or something like that. And eventually I'm sure they also just had servers that hosted the game. I don't know if they did that retroactively or if that is like something they introduced with Reforged, and maybe all Warcraft 3 games are peer-to-peer, whatever. And And so Dota as a mod would have been played that way too. And so the reason why it's like important to note that this is like not a game as a service is because of like being able to direct connect to your opponent.
Okay.
Like you don't have to be connected to BattleNet or have like an account with Well, I mean, at the time, let's just be clear. I mean, like at the time of launch, right? Like you could just direct connect to people or like find like a lobby. And like a lot of these games, the LAN features can now be tunneled over the internet. And so the game thinks you're playing at LAN, but you're playing it online and stuff like that. So it's like,
it's direct peer-to-peer. Or it can
yeah,
be.
Exactly. Yeah. And or like another thing is like I don't know if they did this in like Warcraft or Dota, but similarly is like Counter-Strike. Like you would have servers where people are renting a server from like a third-party hosting company, and like back in the CS 1.6 and CS Source days, like you have the server that you're renting and you are the administrator, like literally the administrator of that server. Like you decide everything about it. You decide who you ban from it. You decide what the settings are. You know what I mean? And then now in the days of CSGO, I think that actually might be still possible. I'm not 100% certain, but I think CSGO has a server browser because I think that's how you do surf maps. But ultimately, like the game is entirely played in matchmaking on Valve servers now, right? So like it's the same thing with like Dota, with like CSGO. Like these are both live service games now, but they exist in a genre that previously wasn't. Especially actually CSGO. Like maybe Dota is not the one to talk about first, but I actually want to talk about Dota because I think that it benefits from this.
Okay. How does it benefit from it though? That's what I'm curious.
So I mean, I think that Dota never would have grown to the size that it did without like ranked matchmaking.
All right. Okay.
And like people caring about their rank as like a representation of skill and like something to work on and increase.
So is it baked in like competitive aspect? You think that is helped by the service model just due to the fact that it can reach a wider number of people?
For that game, for sure.
Okay.
As well, there's an interesting way that they monetize it. So like one of the things they monetize is, you know, they sell you skins and stuff like that, right?
Sure.
And that's cool. That's like really common in games as a service. But one of the things that I like that Dota does is they sell you also for like their major tournaments and specifically for the international. For a long time they've been doing oh dear, it's been a long time since I bought one. What do they call it again? It's kind of like a battle pass. What it really is it's like the ticket. Essentially,
like a season pass?
Yeah, I wouldn't say a season pass because when we say season pass in gaming, we're suggesting like you're buying multiple
year
DLCs
of DLC.
in advance.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I wouldn't use that term. I would say it's kind of similar to like a battle pass, but I feel like that's what they started calling. I feel like Fortnite kind of like made that term. I can't remember what they were calling it. Is it? It's like a book. What do they call it again? I'm sorry, I haven't played Dota since 2017. I think or 2016.
I haven't played Dota ever.
It's a book. It's a book, and so what happens is it's like this book that you buy, and it's an in-game book. It has all these like features that you get to like use to like enhance your experience with the tournament, right? So like let's say the international is going on, it's like esports, and you buy this book. You can make like. It's like fantasy draft, like, or you know what I mean? Like you can make like predictions on the bracket, like which teams like win which games. You can get like these cards that represent like the professional players who are like on teams that are invited to that tournament. And like getting these cards means that you can like put them in these like slots and like you'll gain points depending on how those players perform in their matches.
Okay.
And then the points that you like earn from all that level up the book, the battle pass, whatever it's called, and as well as like certain things that you do when you're playing yourself, just like during the course of it, like just at the same time that the tournament's running.
Sure.
And then it rewards you with like cosmetics and stuff like that. Also, it's technically your ticket access to watch the matches in client instead of having to watch them on like a Twitch stream. And watching the matches in client means you get features like you can watch player perspectives. So instead of watching what the broadcaster,
like you collect things by participating in the tournament or by viewing the tournament. Kind of, it's sort of like it's your ticket to the show, but also you're gaining something by being a part of it as well.
Yeah. And they actually just are called battle passes. Okay. I just looked it up to be absolutely certain. They've always been called battle passes. I don't know why I was kind of panicking about it and thinking, oh, they were called compendiums before. That's why. Okay.
Oh, hence the book idea. Okay, I got you.
Yeah, so it was in 2013, 14, and 15, it was called the compendium. And that's the word I was looking for.
Okay, but you're saying that this benefits Dota, but not all games benefit from game as a service.
Yeah, so like, so when we were talking about the knee-jerk reaction that I was describing on Reddit,
yes,
I think that it's like comes from a place that's justified because we've seen a lot of games that are in the games as a service model that people would have really liked those games not to be, and those games seem to have suffered for it.
I would say it's because it's when they're made. I mean, games are products. Let's be honest; they're made with profits in mind, and various companies approach this from various angles. Some games out of the gate appear to be more minded towards taking your money than others. And I think that people who play games are not super easily tricked by that these days. I hesitate to say it all because obviously that's not true. And I'm not saying that every company out there is tricking you. Some offer free to play with the option of paying if you want to, and they do very well. Genshin Impact's doing really good right now, and you can totally play that for free. They just lock some stuff away behind like huge time gates. That's classic with old apps, old app games and stuff like that. When the apps are taken off, you would let you play the whole game. They'd let you play the whole game as is, but certain things were kind of baked in as what you could criticize them as being not good game design, but these things were, you can get over them by paying money. Locked challenges, timed events, character unlocks, that kind of stuff. So I think just growing up around that kind of stuff, people nowadays are a little privy to that kind of tactic. So when a game, in my mind, one that sticks out, you already mentioned it, the Avengers, people sort of took that and looked at it and went, this is a kind of okay third-person action game. It should be a really fun third-person action game, but its microtransaction thing and the game as a service model is baked into a game that could have been like Avengers Uncharted or Avengers...
And just like didn't need that.
I don't think it did. I do agree with you. Yeah, because I've heard mixed things on the actual game itself. Some people like it, but they think that it didn't need the... Is gacha the right word? The gacha model of like collecting all the characters or different versions?
I don't know exactly how it worked in Avengers.
But I
don't know exactly what the implementation was.
But you know the genre that I'm trying to evoke here is I'm not familiar with that genre of games either.
The majority
just kind of get the idea of them.
The majority of the draw of that genre is it's almost always done in like a acquisition of like a character.
To me, it's like collecting figurines from those
but they're always,
capsule machines at the grocery market.
Yeah, I mean that's what it's named after, right?
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah, like gachapon. That's the.
Oh.
Yeah, that's what the genre is named after.
That makes sense.
And I say genre, and that's like a hilarious statement. Maybe what I really mean is it's.
But it is kind of genre in a way.
Well, I mean, I guess it's like a model. What should I call it? Like a payment model or a monetization model. That's what I'm looking for. It's a monetization model because the game can play any different type of way.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean? Like Genshin is like kind of the first gacha that I'm aware of that plays in like a third person action game.
See what makes
because like a lot of them are like they're like a little tactics. A lot of them are like a 2D like tactical, like Fire Emblem
Heroes
is like a 2D like tactical. You know what I mean? They can play. You can make the game play any type of way.
Yeah.
Realistically, you can. You just need some way to implement a large cast of characters that players want to roll for. But it's essential that in order for it to be considered a gacha, that there's randomness in what you're buying.
Yeah. It's like it's that like Pokemon card opening the pack kind of rareness thing.
Experience, yeah.
Well, okay, so a game like Genshin, I don't think suffers from being a game as a service because people seem to have a lot of fun with it, even if they don't get into the whole collecting all the characters
The interesting
thing?
thing about Genshin is that the service, like the part of it that feels like a live service, isn't the gacha aspects because they've added a new area to the map. They've added tons of quest lines, and they do a lot of like frequent like holiday events or like just
that's all
kind of
free,
completely
right?
random events. And to access and play that content is all free. Yeah.
But the thing is, what they're
Exactly.
doing, what they're doing, man, is they're giving you a play set and making that play set be really attractive, so that you
So
are
that you
more
want
likely
more.
to spend money on characters, so that you can spend more time in that world, and that
Yeah.
makes sense to me.
And
Whereas I
to their
think,
credit, the characters are super diverse in what they can do.
Sure.
Which means that when they release one and you see, oh, it can do this thing that none of the characters that are in the game before can do, I want that. Like that's the feeling that it's designed to make you have, right?
yeah. Whereas I think that, from what I've heard with the Avengers, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I know that this is not a game that I've spent time with, so I totally get that I might be talking out of nowhere on this one. But my understanding there was that it was a little samey character to character, and also it was unclear what exactly you were paying for in an ongoing fashion, because it kind of just felt like, yeah, like a third-person action game that you pay a monthly fee for, which is slightly different because it's giving you a similar thing to Genshin in a way. It's giving you a virtual toy box full of your favorite characters and letting you play in a, in a play box of different sets
So
and
my
stuff.
question is, did they add content? Like, did they add new things that you can do over time?
I've watched
Because I think that's what's necessary for a live service to actually be successful. Like saying, "Oh, here you can buy this stuff,"
Yeah,
doesn't necessarily make a live service. Like, I actually think what makes a live service is
ongoing development.
ongoing
Well,
development or
they are
content,
continuing to
right?
add to it, and there's like a new segment involving Hawkeye that I think I saw an ad for, and like people did
Okay.
have a kind of
So it
positive.
sounds like it.
Yeah, they had a positive reaction to it, but I think what they're doing is their model is more like, this game is good enough that you will want to pay for it monthly, whereas Genshin's is like, this game is being maintained, and we hope that you like it enough that you'll want to play and collect the other characters. Do you know what I mean? Like there's two
Yeah,
different
it almost seems like a sort of arrogance.
kind
With
of. It
Avengers.
was like
like we're so confident that you'll want to pay even more for more. Like it comes off like, I don't know. There's
me-
something about like, what is the developer's expectation?
To me, it
is sort of
comes
the
off-
question that I ask.
to me, it comes off like this, and it's something that we talked about a long time ago that still kind of bothers me sometimes, is the idea that games are taking a lot from streaming service kind of models, and they're looking at it less as you buy a game and then that game is yours, and they're looking at it more now as like you buy into the IP, or you buy into, this season of this game, and you are now in it, and if you want to keep watching it, it's only $9.99 a month or whatever, and we're going to keep on making story content for it as long as we want to, and you keep paying for it. And that's
But it's not yours to
but
keep.
it's not yours. And also, my problem with that is the same problem I have with some TV shows that go on for like a million seasons. They don't have endings, and I think sometimes the story can suffer. Now, this is also,
But it's kind of complicated. Okay.
well, because I was going to say, because
here's-
Final Fantasy 14's gonna keep going, and I'm
like,
I'm not
imagine if
having
they
any
just released a Realm Reborn and they're like, well, we're done. That's the game.
right. I think
know
there's
what I
a
mean?
fundamental
Like-
difference there, though, because MMOs are different from what this game is, though. From what I've seen this game be, maybe there is a
So then
realm.
what if they released Genshin Impact and just said, that's the game. Have fun.
Well,
One-time purchase.
I don't think people would buy the extra characters. Yeah, I know.
Like
This is a good
I
point.
guess what I'm
You're
saying
right.
is like those games are kind of meant for like I think that the thing that carries a service game is something that is going to make you keep going back. So if it's an esport, it's like I said, it's going to be the competitive nature. It's going to
Yes.
be the, you know what I mean? And I think also, just for the record, as always, not every esport needs to be needs to be a live service. Like, you know what I mean? Like RTSs, like those games used to be a lobby game where you'd connect with, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
With like local gameplay, like same thing with like first person shooters. You used to play those in LAN, and those games didn't have like servers that you matchmake on at the time, right? Like you'd play them on servers that are hosted by other essentially consumers of the product, right?
Sure.
And you go play on those, and then you get good, and then somebody knows you, and then you like. I'm talking early days of esports, right?
Yeah,
Obviously
yeah.
nowadays, like every game that's an esport has like matchmaking and is essentially a live service game, right? Except for some of the fighting games. But anyway, just to kind of like bring it back in though, is like, what was I going to say? But I think it's like the evolving nature of the ones that aren't competitive games that like keeps us coming back. And I just don't know what I almost have to wonder what the marketing is, because like, how do I not know what the actual ongoing nature of like Avengers is and like what's been added to it? You know what I mean?
Well, I think
I think
had a lukewarm reception, kind of, which is why
yeah.
it's kind of, maybe it'll get better. Maybe it'll get really good. Like, who knows? Like, I don't know.
If they add stuff to it.
And maybe those people that were
perhaps,
supporting it the
right?
whole time will really benefit from it. And then they can look back on it like early FF14 players and go, yeah, it was rough at first, but man, it's worth it now. Like, that could happen. That could happen.
Right. Yeah, but okay, there's also sort of pitfalls to there's other ways that people have been burned by live service games other than just it not being where it belongs. But what I want to touch on, I just want to mention really quick, because I kind of think it's the first time anybody felt burned by something becoming a live service was maybe Diablo 3. Because Diablo 2 previously had, again, it had BattleNet, but BattleNet was like free, and you still had I think your characters were still, I don't know, your characters were saved on the BattleNet platform, I believe. Were they? Or were they saved locally?
So you're trying to get at the idea that like it's like you don't, it's kind of like that idea of ownership again. You don't actually own anything, and you have to always be online.
So Diablo 3 was an always online game, but the prior ones weren't, right? And so even if you're playing alone and
I do remember
just
that
playing
backlash.
the story, it's online, and there was a lot of backlash for that, as well as like they had done the whole like real money auction house and like a bunch of stuff like that. And it was kind of like around the time where it was, you know, you need to log in and your character's stored on a server, or your wherever your progress is stored on a server on an account. And the game has gotten a lot better than it was, but I think that was like the first time when people got like felt really burned by this, and especially because the franchise had previously established like you can LAN this game, you can like online this game. I actually can't quite remember.
It was kind of the granddaddy of that.
BattleNet already existed with Diablo 2. I'm struggling to
BattleNet was there for Diablo 2. I just watched a retrospective.
But was it there at launch?
Ooh,
that's my question. Like I feel like I remember a form of Diablo 2 where you would like direct connect and like play a session with somebody before BattleNet.
Gotcha.
And then the other one I want to touch on though, as like a different way in which people get burned by a live service game, which doesn't have anything to do with the monetization model, which is Destiny and Destiny 2.
Okay.
One of the issues that you often see with live service games, and it happened with Destiny and Destiny 2, is like people are really happy with an iteration of the game, and then that changes because of some kind of content drop, patch, release, or something, and then people are now tremendously unhappy or whatever. Or you get like, I mean, I'll tell you right now, I'm actually like, as soon as I found out, oh yeah, we're like vaulting areas from the game, so it's like we've put it away. We might bring it back later, but it's just like not accessible. Or like we're vaulting even like literally weapons and like everything that you've collected, like put that aside because this season you're doing new stuff. And it's like, so everything that I've been doing, like that's just like gone. And we're like fresh starting for what reason? Like, do you know what I mean? Like I thought
they're
was
trying
like,
to keep it fresh. I understand why they're doing that, but I don't think that that's necessarily the way to do it.
To me, the idea that like the places that I paid for to be able to go and access are like, I can't just like go to like, I can't remember. I don't know what planet to go. I can't go to like IO or something now. Like, are you serious?
Destiny free though? Destiny 2 is free.
I think it's like free to play the core game.
Oh, but the extra stuff.
You have to have bought in the expansions.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah, and originally that wasn't its model, right? Originally it was a buy-in like base game, and yeah, they went free to play with the base game, but
Okay, so you get locked into
They
a version.
really changed it. Yeah,
Like you're saying they changed for the worse, and then you're locked into well, you're not locked in, but you're in a service game then where you can't play it in the form that you liked anymore
yeah,
because it's
yeah,
evolved into something that you're not into playing anymore.
yeah. This kind of thing can happen all the time, right? I mean, it happened. I experienced that with Destiny, and I've experienced it with another one where they've been experiencing it is with old school RuneScape, where when they launched it, they said, we would poll our changes and it needs 75% support to pass. And then recently, Jagex, the developers, implemented a nerf to the toxic blowpipe, which was one of the best ranged weapons in the game. I think it is overall the best ranged weapon, but the tormented bow can beat it in certain circumstances. I don't know exactly. I'm not up to date on that game, but they nerfed it unpolled. And so people are really upset saying, like, what's the point of even polling us if you're also going to push through changes unpolled? But at the same time, what was happening was it was like the best weapon, ranged weapon in the game is at like level 75. And it's like already too strong. So we can't add anything that goes in that like 76 to 99 range.
Yeah.
And like, how do we,
problem.
and also like, how do we put something between blowpipe and the next weapon below it?
Yep.
And when, you know what I mean? Like they were having, they kind of like put themselves in the corner and like basically they have to nerf the weapon or put it in a higher tier and put something in between. And so they just have to do something.
Yeah,
right?
they weren't going to get 75% approval on either of those, probably.
Because it's one of the most popular weapons to use in the game. And everyone thinks very selfishly, I don't want my blowpipe to be weaker, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Understandable. And so there's no way that would pass in polling, so they just kind of said, we have to make a game integrity change, and that's why it's unpolled.
That's a tough
call.
But
people are now really upset because their live service game is not going to be as it once was, and it's one of those pitfalls of the model, I guess. But at the same time, like I don't think anybody would ever argue that RuneScape, either in any of its forms, historical or current, old school or RS3, like shouldn't be a live service. It's an MMO. MMOs just have to be a live service. Like
yeah.
That's just like core to the genre. Like an MMO is inoperable without it being a live service, because if you let everyone keep their character and join in sessions, that's how you get people editing their character files and stuff, right?
Yeah. What about fighting games? Because a lot of fighting games have taken on the season pass idea. I know people who love fighting games will get mad at me for this, but like Smash Brothers and their ongoing dedication to releasing new DLC characters seemingly possibly forever. Smash Brothers Ultimate might just be the last Smash Brothers. I don't know how much I believe that sentence, but
it's kind of interesting because Smash has like nothing in common with live service games, but at the same time, it still ticks several of the boxes. You have to, quote unquote, have an account, is what I'm going to say, in the sense that you have to either, like, you have to be paying for Nintendo Switch Online. You can't, like, I can't direct connect with you without it going through Nintendo first.
But you do pay for the battle passes, I think that's what they call them, seasons passes. I'm not sure.
Yeah, but it's interesting.
But those are characters,
I guess,
and people get mad about those too.
But they're characters in stages.
Right.
And realistically, it's hard to talk. It's just because the parallels don't exist in the gameplay, because we say, like, okay, so like Final Fantasy XIV is a live service, and they add like expansions that add like zones. They add patches that add like new raids and stuff. That's why it's a live service. Yeah, so we say, and so we say like, oh, well, all they're adding is characters. But like in a fighting game, that is your content. Your content is your characters, and depending on the game, if it actually matters or not, the stages.
Well, they also like patches come with new characters, but also nerfs and stuff like that. And I know that correct me if I'm wrong, I'm actually not sure on this. I haven't booted it up in a little bit, but so I haven't bought into the pass yet that has Sephiroth in it, for example. But I could still fight him online if somebody else has it. So in a way, there is sort of, because one of the problems that people have with Smash is they're upset that they're adding too many anime characters with swords. I don't necessarily
and you
can't
just
that.
Ignore that by not buying. If that's
by not buying the pass. So the version of the
you're helpless to control it.
And because the new characters bring about nerfs for old character sets, if you're not constantly buying the new battle passes for Ultimate,
you get the balance patches no matter what.
This is what I'm saying though. You get balance patches for the whole cast, but if you have taken up a stance where you don't want all the new Fire Emblem people and Pyra and everything in your game,
you're not up to date on balance. If you're saying you reject updates,
because basically you have a balanced character set for a set of characters that is incomplete because they're balanced against the complete set, which could be weird. I don't know how much of a problem that actually is in practice.
or if like a DLC character is like the best counter to like overpowered character as of patch blah 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 or something like that.
Yeah.
It's an interesting question. Well, it's kind of like that's a problem that League of Legends has compared to Dota. Because in Dota, you can play every hero. Like they're all freely available to you, and it's just the cosmetics and like the battle passes and stuff that are the monetized content.
Okay.
But then in League of Legends, you don't have all the characters available to you. There's a rotating cast of free ones. And then as you play, you earn a gameplay currency, and it takes a long time, but you can eventually buy a character with that, or otherwise you buy them with real money. And so besides the rotating free cast, so what you tend to see in League of Legends, from my understanding, and beware that I didn't play it a lot, but I have like previous partners who played it a lot and stuff like that. From my understanding, you see a lot more people who only play one character or like a handful of characters, where in Dota you see a lot more people who are willing to play something because it counters something on the enemy team or because it combos with an ally player's choice, because everything is available, and so people tend to learn a greater portion of the cast. And actually Dota had this really cool thing you could take on called the one hero what was it called? The all hero challenge or something like that. I did this when I used to play the game, and it was a really rewarding experience. And the way it works is it puts all the heroes into like a certain sequence. It's not completely random actually, but it's like a shuffled sequence. And what you do is like it says, okay, now your next hero is Axe, like win a match with Axe. And then so you go and you play, you can lose. It doesn't like reset you or anything. But until you win a match with Axe, it doesn't progress. Then when you beat a match with Axe, it says, play a match with Wind Ranger or something like that, right?
Sure.
And so eventually you go through and you've completed a match with every hero. And like that's just not possible with League of Legends, because they're not going to give you all the
characters for free. Yeah.
Right?
Why would they do that?
Because that's what they monetize in that game. And so, I mean, I think that it kind of harms League of Legends. But so I can definitely see like a scenario where it's like, I don't have that character, so I can't counter this character. Enveloping if you were to be resistant to the game being a service and tried to resist that by not buying DLC as soon as you go online, or if it's like traditional fighting games, you go to your local post-COVID or pre-COVID in the past. And it's like, you can't just be like, I don't want to fight, what's his name? What's Leroy? I remember people were really upset with Leroy and Tekken. You can't just go to your local and be like, oh yeah, I don't want to fight Leroy. I didn't patch my, like, what? You don't do that. You're not playing on your own PS4 or whatever, right?
Okay. So I got two things. First off, after I say the second thing, I want to try to nail down then, as a closure to this topic for this week, I want to try to nail down what it is that can negatively affect a game from a game as service, because I think that's what you're getting at. Some games are bolstered by it, and some games actually suffer from it. So where does the divide happen? When is it used?
I really want to say, I think like what I really want to say is like, you can't jump to the conclusion that it's good or bad.
Okay, but that's what I mean.
Because people seem to be really ready to go, oh, it's a game as a service, that's a write-off.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. So like, I want to say that like, if that's true and people go to do that, where do you think the line is where it can help or hinder? And added to that, do you think that we are simply just sort of in the early days of this model really taking hold? I know it's been around for a few years now. It's not necessarily something new. MMOs have been around for a long time, but its pervasiveness into other genres, its pervasiveness as a as a form of monetizing going forward, it's going to be here to stay. And I think people are sort of figuring it out. Like, no one's really doing it like Diablo 3 did when they went all in on that, and they kind of went back on it a little bit. Like, there's still mistakes being made. Some games are doing it well. Some games are not doing it well. My question to you then is, where do you think it helps? Where do you think it hinders? What kind of games benefit from it? What kind of games don't benefit from it?
I think the monetization model matters.
Yes.
We covered that. I also think that content delivery matters.
Okay.
And content maintenance, right? So like, people felt stung by the RuneScape and the Destiny situations.
For sure.
But people are generally pretty happy with things like FF14, like Path of Exile and like all the esports games, people don't usually get too upset with like patches in some of the esports games, except for maybe people who play like one hero or one champion like League of Dota or something like that, and their hero gets nerfed or whatever. But
Right. The more affected by it.
Usually people seem to be pretty tame on those, but they get really upset when things are taken away completely, which is the general feeling of like what's going on with RuneScape. Less so about the nerf in question and more so about the promise that things would be polled and things are being changed unpolled. Like that's the thing that people are actually more angry about than specifically what's going on with the blowpipe. And the same thing with like Destiny, like things get taken away and people get upset, right? So I think that being really careful about how your content delivery and your content maintenance is performed is essential to making sure your game as a service is being done in a way that is like good and exciting and makes people excited about new content.
I think people also have to get something pretty good and compelling for the entry level, so that if you want to spend more, you're getting something on top of that, but that people aren't being completely cut out of the experience by not paying the highest tier.
Yeah, sure.
But
again, like not every it makes sense, but not every game as a service is a free to play, and not every game as a service, like game as a service, is not a monetization model itself, right?
Right, but I guess what I mean, like
it just
you can have a lot of fun with an MMO without buying the expansions, or you're missing out on stuff like 100%, but you can still play the game up until you can't anymore in terms of the story, and you're not getting
something like or something
not getting
like
a less
not paying
experience.
for Genshin.
Yeah, exactly.
So if it's going to be a game with a free component, sure. On the other hand, though, like Avengers, where games as a service was shoehorned into a game with an upfront purchase,
that's a bit harder to swallow. That's always going to be
and I think that's
swallow.
maybe also another part of why people feel really bad about it. So I want to like make a bit of an assertion. I think that what we saw happen with Avengers, we're going to see it happen more, and there might be other examples already that I'm forgetting about. And so what I want to say about it is, there's sort of like the triple A, like, I don't know how to say it because it comes off as like the same kind of thing that people who are like really salty about this game in like a not good faith way say, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Like if you think like The Last of Us, like in the whole like it's the game version of Oscar bait concept or whatever, right? So if you think of like these types of triple A's, I think that type of game and the type of gameplay that you usually get in that type of game is not gonna mix well with a live service content delivery model.
I would agree with you on that. I think if you're paying,
I don't think that that's a good mix, and I think that's what has gone awry with Avengers overall.
Well, because you're paying upfront for a game and you're paying full price for it, and then the game goes, if you want to keep playing, you got to keep paying me money, and you're kind of left going, well, this isn't an MMO; it's a third-person action game.
Yeah, we see microtransactions and stuff showing up in these games too, and it's like I'm used to spending $79.99 on a game and not having to buy anything else. Like maybe a DLC comes out, but that's like a little bit different than like, why do I have to like earn characters? Why do I have to earn Darth Vader in Star Wars Battlefront 2?
Oh yeah, that was actually a big game for service thing that people were very upset about.
Exactly,
I can't believe we didn't get into that.
No, I thought about it earlier, but I had other points I wanted to touch on. And then I guess the other one thing which is really scary with games as a service is, and it always comes back to this, is the preservation aspect, right? The server shut down, the game is gone, right? I think there's we've already seen it happen a lot, like games that are basically completely gone.
Phantasy Star Online 1 on the Dreamcast?
Yeah, so...
Or do people keep that alive with private servers?
So this is where I'm going, right? So there's a lot of games that have been adapted, and actually one of the ones that I think is really, really cool is there was an Age of Empires live service game.
Oh, yeah. For 2?
Like a decade ago. Well, it was called Age of Empires Online. And it had like a cartoony aesthetic, and it was an Age of Empires game. You had a main city, and then you would play out quests, which would be like campaign scenarios, right?
Sure.
And then you could also like battle other people in like a more like traditional match type of way. But the main city came with all these upgrades and stuff. And based on, if I remember this correctly, based on how you configured your main city, essentially determined what your tech tree looked like when you go and play a match or a quest or whatever, right?
Okay.
That was my understanding of it, and that was a live service game. And it wasn't very successful, and it shut down. But a lot of people liked some of the gameplay aspects it had. So now what's happened is there's been a community based preservation effort for that game called Project Celeste, and it's like online capable. Like they've got a server up, you make an account with it and everything. But what they've actually done is they've heavily modified the game. And from my understanding, there's like very standardized versions of tech trees now for all of the civilizations. So it plays way more like a traditional AoE game now.
Oh, so they maintained the aspects of it they liked and kind of just converted it
And
into
and essentially converted it away from even being like they didn't just make a private server and it's like here's the live service game as it was like a live service. They've converted it out of that model entirely and basically made it function like a traditional Age of Empires game, which is really cool because more typically what you see is something that functions very much like the game did as a live service, except now you've got a private server. And usually the
Yeah.
modifications are very subtle, right?
right. Yeah.
So it's really a cool example. And I've tried it out a little bit and I think it's awesome. But yeah, I think that games that are service games, when they don't have to be, are real unfortunate situations for preservation. And it sucks because it feels like it's yet another situation in preservation where we look at me and we just unfortunately end up saying something like essentially piracy is the only option, right? And in
it
a way,
often is.
in a way, people consider like it depends on who you are, but like private servers, I think running the server is where it's kind of is kind of where it becomes like the quote unquote piracy version because it's like maybe the game was free, but like you can't just run somebody else's like server code and like offer the service to their like of their like product that only they are licensed to run the server. I mean, you're not running the server code, you're reverse engineering it anyway.
Right.
Tends to be what they do is they observe what the client sends and receives and try to determine what the server is doing based on the expected behavior of the game and what kind of information the game is sending out and receiving back, right? And usually people who are trying to make private servers for stuff try to do it while the game is still live and they can get that information. If a game goes down and there's been no effort towards a private server yet, then it's in like serious danger, right? Because
we're at
need
that
the server
point where we've probably lost some games because of that.
So yeah, I think we definitely have.
Huh.
Yeah, we definitely have, and we're definitely at risk of others. Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I would like to do? Let's put a pin in this and go into the game preservation of live service games
on another time. Yeah,
in the future, because I think that there's a really interesting discussion to be had here, especially considering old MMOs, ones that
like you know what's crazy? So in Guild Wars 1, they discovered a sword recently that nobody had ever looted before. It was added to the game around 2012 or 2013, whenever the Eye of the North expansion came out in Guild Wars 1, just shortly before Guild Wars 2 came out, essentially. And they only just found it recently, so 8 years.
Wow.
It had never been looted, right?
That's really
cool.
cool.
So imagine Guild Wars 2 wasn't successful and they had shut down the Guild Wars 1 servers. So then this game would be gone.
And there'd be that would be unused content.
And there would be a piece of content that nobody ever experienced and therefore isn't even preserved on the Guild Wars wiki or like in anybody's documenting of the game. Like nobody would ever know that was there or ever happened. And the craziest part of it is its name and everything is an Easter egg and a real world reference to a player and contributor to the Guild Wars wiki, Guild Wars 1 and 2 wikis both.
So it's
that person
homage.
would have never found out that the homage to him existed.
Oh no!
Had nobody ever found this sword and the game had gone down.
It's a literal like if a tree falls in the woods and no one's around, doesn't make a sound kind of situation.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, but I have never heard of a Guild Wars 1 private server, so I don't even know if that exists or whether it's being worked on. And I mean, the game is still live, so it's
everybody's safe for the moment.
You know, if people, I mean, I'm not going to tell you to go reverse engineer their code, but if anyone does do that kind of stuff, like this is the only time. This is the only like now's the time while there's still servers, right?
That's crazy.
That's all I'm saying.
That's great. Yeah.
Man. So I mean, just to loop it all right back around to what I started it with, I just want y'all listening to sort of think about what games need to be services, what games benefit from being services, and what games don't. And just, next time something comes out and it's announced that it's a game as a service,
Don't count it out just yet.
I just think that I think it's really unfortunate that people just go, oh, it's a service game. It's like, nope, it's going to suck. Nope, not interested. Like, maybe that's a good thing for the game.
Could be. It looks
but it's
like
also a preservation nightmare. It might be a bad thing. You just don't know.
Those two things are completely separate problems.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean it. I guess it doesn't mean it's a write-off just for that alone.
But speaking of things that might make things write-offs for people, that are also legitimate reasons and feature a lot in game for service.
This is your topic?
This is my topic. Yeah, I'm segueing into it.
Have we just like always had segueable topics? Like this happens so often.
No, this time it just worked out really well. This is spurred on by a personal story from recently that you're privy to. I don't want to get into the details of the personal story necessarily, not because it's too personal. It's just not worth spending a lot of time on, but it definitely spurred in my mind.
Just enough to establish the...
Yeah. So I want to talk about... This is a big topic. I don't want to go on too long about it, but communities on games. And I don't want to focus on specifically toxic events, but one happened to me. Ben's aware. I'll give you the quick story. I was playing Final Fantasy 14. I was playing a new class that I was playing healer. It takes some doing. I'm not good at it. I've been playing tank and DPS, so that's totally fair. And there was a miscommunication about my skills and whatnot. I was using what I had available to me in my kit, but I was in this sort of zone where the max level for the dungeon we were doing, you could, in theory, have a slightly better kit. I just didn't because I hadn't unlocked it yet.
Yeah.
So I was using
real quick. The way it works is there's two stages of a healing skill. One of them and like the break point from where you get it or don't get it is like at level 30, and you can enter this dungeon that he was in as early as 28. But if you're above the level of the dungeon, you get brought down to 31. So it's equally possible to be in that dungeon and have the upgraded version of the skill, but it's also completely legitimate to be in there without it, and it's not like you've neglected leveling your class or anything. So he was just on the bottom side of that line.
I was on the low end of the experience pool for this particular situation, and the issue that arose there was the people that were in my completely random party were all sinking their level down to 30, so they had complete kits. And they were doing things
31. It's 31, and you were 28, right?
Yeah, and they were doing things that I am comfortable with. They were doing big pulls. They were pulling large amounts of enemies that I had to keep the tank topped up and everyone topped up. I'm comfortable with that. Not so much as a healer, but I do that as a tank and help out, obviously, as a DPS, although what you do...
It's all the same when you're a DPS.
Yeah, it's all the same.
Isn't it?
But the point is that I'm comfortable with those kinds of scenarios. So I'm aware of what's going on, and because I've played tank, I know what they need. So I was catering to that as best I could, but the issue was they were playing top. I hesitate to say top tier because we're not talking about rating, we're not talking about any of that other stuff. They're playing in a style where somebody who has hit the level cap would play, and I wasn't able to accommodate them as well as I wanted to. And they were basically telling me, "Hey, could you do more of this? Do more of this. Don't just spam that one spell, the lower level healing spell." My issue was that was all I had available, and because of the way they were playing, I had to spam it, otherwise they would literally have died. And not really, no one was super salty in like a way where they were outright mean to me, but I did feel like I was being talked down to. That's besides the point. That's not really the issue I have here. The issue that I have here is that we were pretty much done the dungeon. There was only one enemy left to face, and we just had to go back to the starting and defeat them, and they kicked me out of the party. And I was a little bit taken aback because in my mind, we had gone 90% of the way there when me and Ben have played online and gotten random people who are not as experienced as us.
You
just wait it out,
sit it out.
Or you wipe a couple times.
Communicate with them, give them advice if we can.
So what took me out of this was not that anybody was explicitly mean to me. It was more just that there was not even like it was just, oh, you don't know what you're doing, you're out. Like you don't get to play this one. Because that kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. That's super obviously on the very, very shallow end of the pool in terms of online toxic experiences. I'm aware of that, because I wasn't called anything. There was no fallout from it or anything like that. I had just been having a good time that night playing healer, and I was kind of, screwing up a little bit,
Yeah.
learning the ropes. And then this experience kind of made me go, well, like, what's the point in trying? Because I'm just going to get kicked again. And that kind of sucked because it sort of instilled a little bit of, insecurity in me about my ability to play the game kind of at all in that capacity, which kind of sucks because that soured my night in that situation. But I'm aware that this is a much bigger problem. So than just that, because I will fully admit that is like I said, it didn't have a lasting effect on me. It wasn't like, it was such a small thing that it's not really a big deal. People get kicked all the time. But what I want to talk about is, and what it made me start thinking about was that I've actually had a really great time with the Final Fantasy community in general. Lots of people are very, very friendly, very helpful if you just say, hey, it's my first time. When people do offer you suggestions, usually it's done in a very nice way, like, oh, hey, you forgot your tank stance, or can you focus on the ads, please? Like, it's very, in the moment, it's kind of like there's an urgency to it, but it's not. It's no one's.
They're not really yelling at you.
No one's faulting you for anything. Yeah, exactly. And if you wipe, you wipe. You just get to play again. It's a game. Some people don't think like that, but that's fine too. What I was going to say though is that these games as services and online games, MMOs, all these things where you interact with other people have obviously the built-in possibility of toxicity, and it has been an issue. So my story aside, sorry for the long context there. That's literally just the preamble that got me thinking about this topic in general.
Okay.
How do you police that? Do you need to police it? How do you think they should go? Like, how do you...
From the perspective of the developer?
Maybe. Like, I just want to know your thoughts on what do you think a good method is? Because I know that you've told me that Final Fantasy's mods are pretty strict with their bans. Like, a part of the reason why that community might be
there's something that's
so
a little hard to put my finger on with Final Fantasy 14, and there's a sense that the moderation
do they err on the side of caution? Like, they're just like, it sounds like you might have done something bad, therefore we're going to ban you. Is that it? Because I could see that adding to why everyone seems so friendly.
They have something in their terms of service that basically just says if it can be construed as harassment, it can be bannable. Usually you get a warning and then a ban. You don't. It's not often that you're just going to get banned first, but essentially, you'll get a couple different sides of the coin. One thing that you see expressed often from people that come from other games where you're generally allowed to be a little more toxic within a certain level of reason is a lot of people say or express a paranoia of speaking in public chats at all. They're I never speak in party chat unless I queued with the entire party of people I know.
Oh.
There's people who say I gave advice and then I got reported and I got banned. But there's also this thing where people tell a story about getting banned in a game, and there's another side to the story that you find out about later,
key
right?
details of what they said.
Common, so it's common to see a thread, for example, in the 2007 Scape, which is the old school RuneScape subreddit, where somebody says, oh, my account is banned for real money trading, but it was hacked and blah, blah, blah. And then after 12 hours of people going, wow, Jagex doesn't even have customer support. They didn't respond to the support request. Imagine having to post on Reddit, blah, blah, blah. Then the Jagex staff comes in and says, well, on this date, we determined that you actually sold the account because we also saw this listing on a third-party site that we were monitoring and blah, blah, blah. And what they find out is that the person was lying essentially, right? And so what I almost wonder is, did this culture of paranoia of giving somebody advice because it could be construed as harassment by a certain aspect of the community, did that come from reality, or did that come from one too many falsified stories of I told this Sprout to turn on their tank stance, and they said, you don't play my sub. And then you don't pay my sub. And then I got in trouble. Like, when really what they said is like, you like swear, slur, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Blah, 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 and then they get reported. And like, you know what I mean? Like the line is very hard to find because it's very difficult to determine exactly what the truth is. But then we've had some also really clear-cut cases of like, that shouldn't have happened, but then they've also been rolled back. So, for example, somebody had put up a party finder under like the miscellaneous category to advertise their in-game house at hosting like an RP event. And apparently a staff moderator, whatever, sent them a tell, put them in GM jail and sent them a tell or talk or whatever, and said, you can't use the party finder for RP. It's only supposed to be for content that specifically is like about going into a duty or like playing like a piece of like content, like by name. Like you can't use it just for like, I guess essentially for social activities or something, which was kind of a weird take. And that person got a warning. And then there was a big like stink about it. Like, then why is there a role play tag in the game? Like, why can't we use the party finder to find a party for anything we may choose to want to do, whether it exists in the game or exists in our minds or whatever, right? And then as it turned out, once the enough noise had been made and it got the attention of others in the, I'm guessing the community management teams at Square Enix, that warning was overturned and they said, no, go ahead and use the party finder to make, you know, a listing about like hosting an RP event. Like it's fine, right? So there have been times where there's been a shoot first, ask later aspect, and there's been times. So it's anyway, to sort of bring it into more generic terms, like how do you handle that as the developer? It's really hard to say.
Also, though, from the side of us as players, how do we handle those communities? Because those communities are built of players, and I think everybody wants to have a fun experience. So it's difficult because it's a lot harder than just saying, well, everybody just needs to be nice, because you'll always have people that are not there for that. Do you know what I mean?
There's something I really liked in Dota, and I don't know that it can apply to an MMO easily, but it can certainly apply to session-based esports types of games a lot, which is Dota has something called the low priority queue, and it's a punishment for several different possibilities. It's a punishment for leaving a game early. You know what I mean? Like quitting
rage
a game,
quitting?
disconnecting. Yeah, right. Like basically, yeah, like leaving a match. If you get disconnected, that game gives you the opportunity to rejoin your session. So, and it also doesn't put you in low priority from just one disconnect. There's certain thresholds of actions you have to have taken or done before you get put in, as well as taking a certain number of reports. Can put you in low priority. And the way low priority works is you then are only queued with other people who also are in low priority.
Oh,
and
okay.
you have to achieve 5 wins in the low priority queue. It might have changed, okay?
So they put all the toxic people in the same
queue with each other, and you have to win a certain number of games in the low priority queue to get out.
That's delightfully
and it's like
genius.
Not ranked or anything, so your matchmaking rating and all that stuff isn't going up. So if you're like playing like, I'm playing Dota ranked, I'm trying to get to 3K MMR or something, and you're like raging and storming and yelling at people and stuff like that, and you get reported too much or you rage quit too much, you get put in low priority, and it's like now your next 5 matches are worth nothing in terms of your journey to reach your desired rank or whatever.
That's so funny.
It's just about completing them. And it used to be that you had to play 5 matches, but what they found was that people would just grief those matches as well. They would just sit there and like AFK and just, do that for 5 matches to get out. Which is also like a reportable thing to get you in low priority is like AFK.
So now you have to win them.
Now you actually have to win them.
That's genius.
Yeah, they made that change and that helped a lot. And then another one also from Valve, I don't know if it came to Dota, but it was first introduced in Counter-Strike, which was they made like a special matchmaking queue for people who had associated their cell phone number with their Steam account. So it didn't show it to anybody else. It wasn't like you're like leaking your own number or anything.
Because it adds accountability, real world accountability.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if you go and get that account banned or something, you now have to like go change your phone number or get a burner number or something. And there's always going to be
See,
weird
part
ways
of me
around
doesn't
some of these things. But
part of me doesn't like the idea of this kind of policing, though, just because it feels like personal information that I'm volunteering that
to
I
the
don't
developer.
that I don't necessarily want to give out. Like just in today's data world, I don't always want to be giving out personal
Yeah, I
information all the
understand
time
that.
if I can avoid it. I know for games as service, you're already doing that because they have your name and your credit card
I
number.
think Steam
I
like
get it.
already had my phone number
Yeah.
for some reason, but
I get the
but
idea behind
I
it,
get
though.
it if I get not wanting to hand it out all the time. I mean, at least it's not the extreme. So the most extreme version of this scenario, and you and I talked about this before, is in Korea with a lot of their online games. To make an account, you have to provide your Korean social,
Yep.
which also I can't. Again, we also had this discussion. I'm not Korean. I don't know, but from my understanding, the amount of damage you can do with somebody's social security number is not the same as with the systems in like North America.
Yeah,
So apparently it's not as crazy as it sounds, but
because
it's
you
still,
describing this to me gave me like
it sounds
cold
wild,
sweat.
right? But
I was like,
yeah,
"Ooh, I don't know."
apparently it's not as crazy or severe as it sounds to us, just because their systems there work a little differently. But it is essentially a unique identifier number that you have, and you have to use it when you sign up for basically like any online game or like MMO or anything like that. All of them, and it's specifically because if they do ban you for like cheating or like whatever things are bannable in their game, it's like you have to take it way more seriously, because if you don't, like what are you going to do when you need to make a new account afterward,
Yeah.
right? Like it's so
And-
I'm sure that works tremendously well over there, but at the same time, it's like, who wants to give that kind of information to
See,
a company, right?
To me, the tricky part is the dev side of things. They have to do what they can from their end to maintain an environment where people will want to continue playing the game, right? So,
Yep.
but it leaves them in
If
a
people
tricky.
are quitting because they're getting raged at or harassed, that's also just bad for the game and eventually its profitability.
Yeah, but it puts them in a tough place because a lot of the ways they can solve these problems is by banning people, censoring, chats that are global, or if a lot of other players can hear them, those kinds of things. And those are difficult things because those are pretty unpopular things to do to people online, because people get, I'm paying for this. Like, why do you get to do this to me? It's just like, well, did you read the terms of service? Obviously you did not, but that's a different problem. The point is that it's tough because they're going to get criticism no matter what their method is to deal with this. Although I think that low
Yeah.
priority queue thing is kind of hilarious personally. So that leads me to, well, what can the community do? And in these situations to help, because if the community has like a groundswell movement and sort of like informal community of etiquette or conduct that people generally agree upon, you can sort of root out some of this problem from the get-go, because these people just are not suffered at all. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not like the developer doesn't have to step
like
in with
nobody
bans.
likes you if you do XYZ, and is sort of
It's like self-policing in a way, but
yeah.
it's like self-policing, but from a group of people that have no real power on how the game is actually administered.
That's a thing that can exist, though. Like, it's possible in certain online games to, for example, end up with something of a negative reputation among other players.
Oh, definitely.
It's difficult because the scale of these games, a lot of the times, like if it's an MMO, you got to really be going hard at it and screwing over a lot of people to build a bad enough reputation that like almost everybody knows you and like won't play with you anymore. But it's
I
not
guess
unheard of.
I guess I'm not talking specific about that, though. I'm saying, like, so going back to Final Fantasy, it's just my best experience, my reference point for this. I find that a lot of people are really helpful and really nice. And if you say, hey, I'm new at this, they'll go like, oh, cool. So this boss has this mechanic and this is how you do it. And then if it doesn't go well, but you still clear, everybody goes, thanks for party. And I don't think, I honestly do not believe that a lot of that is built out of this aforementioned fear of maybe being banned. I think some of that is just that this community of people has developed in a way where toxic.
Oh, I agree, by the way. I don't know where that fear comes from, but the people who express that fear of being banned are not actually usually particularly nice. I mean, that's kind of weird to say because I know some people who also feel that way, and at least they're nice to me. But like,
Sure.
I feel like a great majority of people like that are players who come from something that is more lax in terms of what they let you say to people, or like where the community is more abrasive. Just like inherently, they're just more abrasive. So like, for example, again, so like WoW is a game where because its population is so high, I think there's a real sense of like I'll never see this player again.
Okay.
So there
People
is
care a lot
bit,
less about what they say to other people.
there is a bit more of like, yeah, people just going like, oh, like F you screwed up or whatever, right? And so it's a little bit, and I'm not trying to say this as in like WoW players are toxic. I don't want this to be like an FF14 versus WoW thing or anything like that. But
let's make it one. No, I'm just kidding.
Or
kidding.
yeah, or even well, I don't know, like. I guess it's a little hard to say, but like you know what I mean? Or even like esports, like again, we mentioned Dota a lot today. Dota players, oh my god, let me tell you about toxicity. I have seen stuff in Dota that I have not seen in like any other game as far as toxicity goes.
But like, why would anybody want to play these games if that's what's going on in the chat? It doesn't make you want to learn it. It doesn't make you feel good about it.
I guess what I mean is like players who come from those kind of games and wish they could act like that in FF14 are, in my opinion, the ones who I think are the ones that blow up that complaint about like it's not safe to say anything in FF14 the most. Like I think there's a certain amount of disingenuousness that comes from being used to being able to say more extreme stuff in other games and knowing that like the FF14 community will probably not like that, and thinking that the developers will be like very like anti that, which like all developers have some form of like will action you if you like swear at people in like harassment way or whatever, like but you know what I mean? Like I think there's a certain amount of inflation of the issue.
Do you think that some of it just comes from the fact that from the early days of online gaming, this kind of toxicity existed because of the whole anonymous factor, and therefore now that we're into sort of a more adolescence of online gaming, you're running into these communities of people that want to play online and not run into that, but you're running into people who grew up in that, and
the game doesn't. You know what I mean? I guess another thing is like the game doesn't ever really pit you against each other for any reason.
Right, which is why it's weird when you're into toxic experiences when you're playing something completely cooperative and there's no downside to failing. Like, I don't understand those situations.
So there is a downside to failing, though. And this is usually why you get toxicity in FF14.
Time?
Which is time. Yeah, people don't want to waste their time.
Sure.
And
I understand
people,
that.
You know, they expect this leveling roulette to go really fast because they have raid in 25 minutes and they queued for it and it's taking them forever because there's a sprout that keeps dying or something like that, and they get really upset and they start, you know what I mean? Like if you're going to see it, it's going to be because it's taking longer than it's supposed to be. That's always really what it's going to be. Or it's going to be, you know, we're raiding and I'm trying to prog this and you keep wiping at the earlier mechanic that we're all supposed to be past. If you join this group, you're supposed to be past this, so why are you wiping on this?
Well, I don't want to limit this just to Final Fantasy 14 though.
I understand. But and so I think that works the same way as raging at your teammates in Dota. Because by the way, when we're talking about like cooperative whatever, like the thing is people don't really rage at the opponents that much in Dota. Like you might a little bit, you might do some trash talk, but the people, like the great toxicity in Dota is people yelling at their teammates. Like we are going to lose this game because of you, right? Is what it essentially boils down to. And same with like most esports games that are played in teams is people rage at their teammates. The team doesn't stick together. So and so I think that the game minimizing situations where players can let each other down goes a long way. Or like another one I think of, like for all the flaws it has, there are certain aspects of Guild Wars 2, and I don't necessarily know that I agree with all of them from a game design perspective, but it's indisputable that these what did I say? There's certain aspects that these aspects of Guild Wars 2, like I'm certain that I would say undoubtedly these aspects of Guild Wars 2 like maintain the game as like not extremely toxic, which are like in that game, there is no way that you're like competing for like any kind of kills of monsters in like anywhere, whether it's open world or dungeons or anything. Like if it's an instance, then if you're in the party, you're getting some form of credit. If it's open world, as long as you've hit it, you're getting some form of credit. You're not rolling against each other for loot. Everyone just gets their own completely instanced loot. You know what I mean? You're not competing
interesting.
for it.
Okay.
Everyone gets like full XP just for having participated or whatever. Like there's no way. Whereas like in more old school MMOs, there's like, we both hit the monster. Now the XP is divided 50-50.
Oh yeah.
So stop hitting the monsters.
I
trying
remember
to farm
people
here.
stealing stuff in Phantasy Star Online was a big problem.
Yeah. Or like,
Stealing rare
you
drops.
picked up my item or like whatever, or you know what I mean? So it's like, I think that the games have shifted towards a design that unless it's literally PvP modes, is designed to not give players reasons to be upset with each other.
Yeah.
And I think FF14
I mean, they're
is
finding
built that
reasons to
way.
be upset at each other, but
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, people can fail at group content, and that's where
totally
it happens. But that, I don't know how you get rid of that unless you just make the entire game solo. And then why are you making a MMO? Just make an offline game.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I mean, there's always going to be reasons, but
Yeah.
I think you can minimize them in the game design. It's just the other question is that the game you want to make? Like if you long for the days of old school MMOs, you're not going to pick those features, and you just have to accept that your community might end up being a little more toxic because of it.
Could you say then that maybe a two-pronged approach, both on the dev side to not necessarily be punitive, but design the game in a way that encourages non-toxic interactions, and then on the community side, an actual sense of community where you belong to this group of people and they're happy to have you here, just like so that everybody playing has like a similar mindset.
Yeah.
I mean that's really hard to actually create, but I would say that sometimes you get into some of these games and you realize that the community actually is very helpful and fun, and then that makes you as a player more helpful and fun and chill because you realize that these people are all just here to have a good time at the end of their workday or on the weekend, and it fosters that sort of thing. And if the game's designed in a way that also is built to accommodate that, you end up in this sort of more maybe idyllic online community than otherwise.
So there's another way as well that I want to mention, and I don't necessarily
everybody
know,
all the time.
I don't necessarily know
Iron
that works with
Fist.
MMOs, but the fighting game community does two interesting things. One of them that they do is they sort of mock toxicity, at least certain types of toxicity.
Yeah.
I would point at, for example, like the Scrub Quotes Twitter, which is where you get a lot of like the sort of newer player. And in a way, they are sort of also, it seems like mocking a new player. But what a scrub really is not a new player. It's a person who doesn't know something and like doesn't want to learn. Right. So when somebody's like, oh, stop like throwing projectiles at me. That's cheap. That's stupid. And then they start like swearing at you and being toxic. It's like the true beginner who is good faith wants to learn is going to say, how do I deal with this? What am I supposed to do? Oh, I have this move to get in, or I can, I'm supposed to jump them. And then we play the mind game of jumping the projectile and getting Shoryuken or whatever. Right. And, whatever. So the scrub is like, it's not my fault. What's the Core gaming video with the Scrub Lord's Prayer? I can't remember what it is. It's like, my controller's broken. And if it isn't, then that move is cheap, and if it isn't, then it's not fun to play that way, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So I want to say, like, for example, the Scrub Quotes Twitter in a way self-moderates, because by the time you're deep enough in the FGC, at some point you end up seeing that Twitter and you go, I don't want to get posted there.
Yeah, so then it makes you moderate your own behavior, kind of.
In its own sort of way, it's like, if you're going to be toxic, and I would say that is a form of toxicity, being like the scrub, the not beginner, but the scrub, right? The unwilling.
Yeah.
Then that they've sort of moderated that out by.
Would you say that
by kind of shaming it?
Like, so they fixed toxicity by being toxic to toxic people?
And so that's also where I was going to kind of go with this, is like they sort of embrace toxicity in a way as well, which kind of comes in the form of like, because the FGC is where you'll see, compared to most other games or competitive scenes, like the most boasting, perhaps, or like a lot of like trash talk. But it's
like wrestling, though. It's like fun. They do it like for jokes, don't they?
Yeah, usually. I mean, there's obviously also cases where people have gone too far, and
Totally,
so
100%.
some care is needed to understand who you're talking to, and sportsmanship, and like I think one of the sort of sportsmanship things that comes in the FGC is whatever you say or do or whatever happens in the game, you fist bump or you shake hands or whatever, and
Yeah.
at the end of the day,
The game is the
it's just
game,
a match,
and outside
right?
of the game, be
And
nice.
yeah, and so like there are tournaments that are very esportsy with their sponsors and super professional, and then there's like tournaments where the main bracket's done and now we keep the stream up and we're trash talking and it's after hours and like what I mean, and it's cool because what they've essentially done is they've turned it into a joke in a way, and then it's like what happens is like if you're not sort of like able to read the room and you're like actually going to be like actually toxic, usually people are going to like not really like you, and then you're not really getting invited to like the next thing or whatever, and then you just kind of like find that you sort of get put on the outside by just not being able to like I don't know to
on paper that does sound
not
toxic.
be truly it kind of is toxic, but in
But
a way
it's being intolerant of intolerance, sort of.
in a way it's kind of like a weird reverse version of that, I guess. Yeah, so
The reverse Uno card.
You kind of have to have a thick skin to get into the FGC. I'm not going to say that this is the ideal way to work with it, but
No.
by sort of embracing it to a certain degree, they've also minimized like the real severity of it and turned it into like trash talk in that like agreed upon, in that social contract way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, this has been a lot of talk about online games. Do you want to move into...
and because it's a talk about online communities, I just want to shout out a content creator who I really like. I mentioned him earlier. I mentioned the Scrub Lord's Prayer, but actually a video that I think that he has a lot to do with some of this stuff. Where one of the things he talks about a lot in the video is like values, and like a community has to have like values, and they have to like sort of, at least to a degree, have each other's back. Like one of the analogies he makes is like Costco members are not a community, despite that they have a membership because they don't have each other's back. So yeah, so that video, as I would call it, like further research into the idea of like online communities. That video is called "Analysis: The Need for Community," and it's by the YouTube channel Core A Gaming. That channel makes absolutely amazing content. I would highly recommend that video to anybody who's listened to this topic, because while it's not specifically about toxicity or not toxicity, it is about how online communities, or even offline communities, but how communities kind of self-regulate. And and so that's I would say would be like a great extended watch for a similar version or similar topic. Yeah.
I can vouch for that video. It's a fun one. But for now, let's move on to Backlog Land.
You know what it is, it's the Backlog.
All right, it's Backlog time. Ben, what do you got this week?
So I have on my list a game called You Must Build a Boat. I bought it on Steam.
What kind of game is it? I've never heard of this.
I think it's a puzzle game.
Oh.
And the reason why is, so I'm looking at it. It's a puzzle game. I bought it a few weeks ago, and it's sort of the sequel to a game I've played before, which is why it's on my list. It's a sequel to a game called 10 Million.
Also have not heard of that.
Yeah, 10 million, and that's expressed as digits, right? Like 1 and then however many zeros. 10 Million started as a mobile game, but it's on Steam now. Yeah, it's on Steam. 10 Million is like a dungeon crawling matching puzzle game. So
that's cool.
I've talked to you about it before. I think once I start describing it, you might recognize the idea. So the way it works is across the top edge, there's the protagonist who is trying to escape a dungeon that he's like locked up in or whatever. And he sort of like, he moves left to right in like sort of a level, and like runs up to a monster or runs up to a chest or runs up to various things. And you have a board now with like a grid of blocks, like any puzzle game, where you match them and you destroy those blocks or whatever. But the symbols on the blocks aren't just arbitrary; they're actions. So you're matching, but it's also context sensitive. You run up against a monster and you want to match swords, right?
Yeah.
You run up against a treasure chest, you want to match keys or like whatever. And you can take actions when there's not something in front of you. And there's also a couple, I think there's like a dud block as well. There's like shields and things like that, torches. I haven't played it in a while, so I can't remember all of the context actions. But yeah, essentially you're doing this dungeon crawl, dungeon escape situation, and you are matching, but with a context sensitive layer.
Okay. And this boat game
And-
is the same thing, but with a boat?
So I'm not sure. Yeah, I think it's just the sequel, and I don't know that it has any other features. I mean, I'm looking at the Steam screenshots and I'm seeing like what looks like a buff or an upgrade, like your shield temporarily causes your attackers to burn. And then when I look at a screenshot of the playfield, I see some similar things. You know, I see the character at the top. I see some stuff going on with locks. I see swords and keys. I see a couple boxes I never saw before. There's one that's like a flexing arm, and there's one that's a brain. There's a fish in there. So I'm not sure how like the premise of it. I know in 10 million the premise is you're trapped in the dungeon and you have to eventually make it to 10 million points.
Oh.
And so the thing that's really cool about it, about 10 million is
title.
yeah, so 10 million is kind of roguelike. So like, you know, you play through the first thing, you kill all these monsters, you earn these treasures, and like when you match coins and treasure chests, you're actually gaining like gold, right?
Yeah.
And then you keep that gold, so it's kind of roguelike. You spend that gold on upgrades or whatever, and the next time you go, because of the upgrades and because it's just a different level and stuff like that, you're going to get like more points. So like as long as you keep playing the game, the honest truth is you're guaranteed to actually get 10 million. And then after that, you can play like for scoreboard, like any puzzle game or whatever.
Okay.
But it's interesting
So
that
your
their
progress
points,
is guaranteed, kind of, as long as you keep playing.
like kind of like you can fail. You can actually fail, right? Like there's like
Sure.
there's like your health or whatever. You can like fail. But what I mean is because of like the roguelike nature of it and because of like the way the levels work, like if you keep playing it and you're like learning and trying hard and also investing your coins and upgrades and stuff like that, you're gonna get better at it. I mean you're gonna get higher scores and eventually you'll hit 10 million, which is when the guy is able to like escape the dungeon and get his freedom. So anyway, yeah. So you must build a boat as a sequel, and it says travel the world with procedurally generated, finding artifacts, capturing monsters. So recruiting crew. So it looks like this one isn't an escape game.
It's like
So my question is then, what is the end? Like, what is the premise? Right? I'm seeing a
You build
screenshot
the
with
boat.
a bunch of characters in a boat, all in their own separate rooms, and like, is that your crew? Like, what does it mean? So
you escape the ocean, you go into the
Yeah.
sky, and then the third one's about leaving the atmosphere.
yeah.
my prediction.
So I mean, it's a sequel in the sense that it's again a context sensitive puzzle matching game, but yeah, I don't know how the actual like meta narrative of the game, you know what I mean, between missions of matching, I guess. I don't know how it works in this new game, so I'm curious.
That sounds like a good pick.
Yeah.
It's not one I was expecting.
I played the it was originally a mobile game, so it's all been ported to Steam now.
Gotcha.
In what looks like 16:9 like new UI and like
Heck yeah.
they didn't just go like
60
here's, like-
frames per second, baby.
well, what I mean is they didn't just go like here's your mobile game
Yeah, no, I know.
interface on they looks like they did a clean job of it, but and the really cool thing about it is that it was like a completely microtransaction free game. Like not free. I mean like it was devoid of any kind of microtransactions or anything. It was you just
Buy it.
you just buy it and that's the game, right? Like
The
it was
golden age.
it was like it was like the sort of old school business model of a game but on mobile, which is what originally piqued my interest about it. Like literally it was when I first moved to Toronto. I used to play it on the subway a lot. So I just leaked my city, but whatever, you're not going to find me. It's a big city.
It's quite large.
When I first moved here, I used to play it on the subway all the time as like a mobile game. And yeah, and anyway, I don't know, fantastic game. And so I bought the sequel a couple weeks ago and I haven't fired it up yet, but I want to get back into it because I had such a good time with that game. And I like puzzle games. So
Yeah. Looking forward to it.
I think I'll get a kick out of it. All right. So what do you have?
Oh, man. You're going to just agree with me right away.
Probably.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you will. You'll be like, yeah, you should. Mario Odyssey.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah. Yeah, I figured. I bought the Switch collection, the Mario 3D All-Stars physical, back when that was announced in September. and I played all of them on there. That's actually like
You were
I'm
telling
not-
me you were feeling burnt out on
Well, it's-
Mario, and so you weren't ready to pick up Odyssey.
it's because I'm like, you know, at a wine tasting, you never drink the wine. You have a little bit and you spit it out or whatever you're supposed to spit it out, and you have like a bunch of different ones. And it's supposed to be like a real smorgasbord. You
I've
can have,
never
like,
done that, but you know,
Okay.
it's not like I'm unfamiliar with the concept.
Okay, I haven't done it either. Full disclosure, I'm just saying, like, that's what I see is what people do. That's
Okay,
how I
yeah.
treat video games a lot of the time. I've explained it to people where I play games and I kind of dip my toes into a bunch of different worlds. I have, admittedly, not great
track record of finishing
track record of
things
actually
you started.
finishing games. So for me to play 3 old school 3D Mario games all in a row in the
And
span of like
finish
2
them.
weeks and finish all of them was a bit much. And
I love the feeling of finishing a game, though. I find it so rewarding, and when
Yeah,
I do
I
it back
do.
to back,
yeah, I do.
Oh,
No, it
it's
was
amazing.
immensely satisfying to do
I think
64, then Sunshine, and then Odyssey like that. It was really fun because I was like anticipating the next game and being like, oh yeah, I'm really excited for that because I remember playing that when I was younger. So that was like a blast. And I had beaten 2 of those 3 already before. I just had never beaten 64. So that was like, it was fun. I had a great time with it. I just didn't immediately want to get into Odyssey,
Yeah.
but everybody has been telling me that is maybe the best one. And I know I'll like it. And I know there'll be a time when I want to play it. I don't know that time is even still now, but it's on my list. It's definitely on my list.
there are 2 moments in Odyssey that I think about a lot.
Really?
One of them kind of choked me up a little bit.
Really?
Yeah, I was.
Was it like a nostalgia choke up where you're just like, oh my
It
God, this is
really
what I wanted
was.
Nintendo to be the whole time?
No. Yes. It was more like it was more of it was a nostalgia choke up, but what it really felt like, less like this is what I wanted Nintendo to be all the time, more like the homage that is being paid right now just makes this all just feel like such an amazing like celebration of itself and its like roots
Okay.
and of gaming altogether, and as this being like a hobby that I like love so much, that like seeing this and what it means and represents, like I don't know, it just hit me in that moment and made me like feel just like really good and like happy that I was seeing it and happy that I was experiencing it,
Okay.
because it felt like just like a moment that sort of respected itself. and so I just loved it. And then the other thing is the ending. I think about the ending a lot because it's just really cool. The ending is just so cool.
Well, that's good to know. Like
and everything in between is worth it. Like it's a good game. I mean,
know
I have
this game is
criticisms
worth
of it, but
I know
have
this game is worth
criticisms
it.
of it.
I want to buy a physical copy of it. I will. I'll do it maybe soon. I just haven't yet. I don't really have a lot to say about it because I know that I'll probably, just love it to bits.
yeah.
That's my backlog pick. I'm sorry, I don't have a whole lot to add to it. It's just I was thinking about that,
There's
and
not
I just
maybe that much more to say about it, but
I think it kind of speaks for itself. I know it comes with glowing reviews. I know I'll enjoy it. Just haven't played it yet.
yeah, that one was a good time. I liked that. That was a
Literally
good time.
nothing stopping me except for myself.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, well, here's the thing. When you're ready, go for it. When you're not, I mean, I also wanted to say, I'll let you carry on, but when you were saying something about, when I was talking about how it feels really good to finish a game, I think that's part of why one of my past picks was a short hike, and why I think about a short hike all the time. I often think about, I should just, it's my day off. I should just play a short hike and finish it in one sitting because it's just like a 3-hour game, and it feels really good to beat a game. So why don't I just like, and I obviously, okay, understand I want to play the game for other reasons because I've heard it's a quality game and a good experience, etc.
yes.
But there's a part of me that also goes, it's 3 hours. Why don't I just give myself that like endorphin rush or whatever of like I beat
Because
a game?
there's near raids to do.
I struggle to put down FF14 over the course of this pandemic. I mean, I've had phases where I just play like my one game. Usually it's MMO phases, right? And they usually go for a while, but I think the pandemic in particular is really amplifying it more than it's ever been before because
Yeah, Oh, man, no one's going to
not
hold
a
you
whole
accountable
lot
for that.
else to
That's
do.
totally fair.
Yeah.
So,
I think I'm finally gonna put it down to go deep into Nier though when that comes out. So that'll be nice.
We'll have a lot to talk about there.
Yep.
We'll save that for a future episode, though. As per usual, you can find us at that seems silly to say, at TPCC_podcast on Twitter. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you think about online communities and games as service. I'm curious. Obviously, we've said a bunch of stuff, as this is probably one of our longest episodes, looking at the counter tick up. But
Yeah, it looks like it.
But I want to know what you guys think out there. Once again, thanks for listening. I don't know if you have any closing comments, Ben.
At TPCC podcast, you mentioned that this podcast cannot continue on YouTube.
We got to hit up Snester Days again, maybe this week.
Yeah.
We fell off that for a little bit.
Yeah, that I'd like to get that done soon. We might be able to do one. Let me just think. Well, I'll have to let you know, but
let me know.
Hopefully we can do one.
We're also looking into putting up these on YouTube for people that don't have Spotify or iTunes or any of those other options. So we want to make this show more available. So look at that coming soon. That'll just be on our channel on YouTube. But yeah, thanks for listening. And for now, this podcast cannot continue.